All right, welcome everyone to this live chat with Juniper Perlis. She is going to be teaching a workshop called Unraveling Chronic Pain on August 19th, and it's going to be a 2-hour workshop. Sorry, Alina's eyes just got really big. Is everything okay? Yeah? Okay. And so we're here to answer any questions that you may have about the So Juniper, is there anything you want to say before we get started?
Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you, and I look forward to taking your questions. Marcia, I think there's something going on with your audio, and maybe you hooked up to those headphones because the audio did get weird. And now you're muted.
Does that sound better, Juniper?
Much better, much better.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. All right. Do we need to repeat anything that was just said, or did it come through clear enough?
I think it was good enough.
Okay. And is there anything else you wanted to say before we get started, besides that my audio wasn't very good?
No, I'm just excited to be here, and I'm excited to hear people's questions, and I'll talk more about the workshop as we get into the chat.
All right, so we're going to dive into some questions that were already submitted, but if at any point you have questions, please go ahead and submit them through the platform that you're watching on, and we'll try to get to everything. So the first question is, my mom had a hip replacement 17 years ago, and like many others has had pain with it every day since. She now has chronic pain throughout her body, and it is worse on the same side as the hip that she had replaced. She also has osteoporosis and osteoarthritis and a functional scoliosis. She also has chronic anxiety, and she does do a little bit of Feldenkrais and finds the breathing lessons particularly helpful. So now the person's question is, I'm wondering if the problem is also related to her nervous system, and would this workshop help her, do you think? And she says, I feel like she's stuck on a treadmill of never-ending pain that's reducing her life to nothing but that.
Well, thank you so much for submitting the question. And I'm really glad that you and your mom are involved in Feldenkrais. So I think that that's already a very good step. The fact that your mom is navigating anxiety and physiological challenges, the osteoporosis, it complicates her healing path, but it doesn't mean that she necessarily has to do anything differently than she would do otherwise, or that any of us would do to make ourselves feel better. So the way in which all of us can channel our efforts toward feeling better could be the same, regardless of whether or not we're dealing with physiological manifestations, such as like bone diminishment or rheumatoid arthritis or anxiety. All of those things can be brought into the process of healing that we're going to navigate in this workshop, or that we all have to navigate anyway, but we're going to develop tools for in the workshop. So that being said, I think it's a perfect fit for your mom, since she does have chronic pain and anxiety, which we're definitely going to address. Marcia, there was something else there. Oh, right. Can you repeat what she said about her life diminishing?
Yeah, exactly. So she says that she feels like her mom is stuck on a treadmill of never-ending pain that's reducing her life to nothing but that.
Right.
Can you relate to that?
Totally. Yes. And also it's, I hear you saying that you feel that way about your mom, and I don't know if your mom feels that way, but regardless, whoever feels that way, that is a very real and difficult feeling to deal with. I can totally relate. And I think that it's a very common reaction to chronic pain, because it's difficult to live with day after day. And one thing that we're going to be talking about is finding this spaciousness within the experience of chronic pain, I was thinking about a metaphor of the unraveling, and that what it is that we might get an idea in our head that is a really like tight, painful weave, like a tight, awkward, bunchy kind of weave. But as we start to look at it and explore what it's actually composed of, the weave gets bigger and bigger, and the possibilities for unraveling it gets greater. I was just thinking about like a bunchy knot versus like a spacious, open kind of weave. And we're going to be looking for that kind of spaciousness and finding where we can move into it. And that it's really, truly possible for all of us that we can change the way that we think about our experience of pain. And if we think about it in terms of its restrictiveness and how it limits us, that becomes our experience of it. And if we think about it in the context of everything else that's happening, the weight that it takes, the amount of energy it takes, the pull that it has is lessened, because there are other things within our experiential field that also take our attention, and that relieves some of the weight and the anxiety and the stress and the painfulness, the emotional painfulness of the pain. So we're definitely going to be doing that kind of stuff. So she should come and you should come.
That's great. There's another question that someone's asking on behalf of a family member. And you've already, I think, answered it a little bit, but in case there's anything else you want to say, they say, do you have any advice on how to accompany a family member that lives with chronic pain?
I don't know if the company means like a company to the workshop or a company in life. But I would say come, if a company means coming to the workshop, just come. And if this person needs help sort of navigating the instructions, that there will be the support staff there that can help with that kind of thing, with the logistics of managing the instructions during the workshop. And if you mean accompanying through life, I would say that the way in which we approach somebody else's pain doesn't have to be too different from how we approach our own, that it requires a great deal of generosity and compassion. And if there's judgment involved, or even a feeling of like wanting the person to do more for themselves than they are doing, that can sometimes impede the relationship as well as the progress of the person who's dealing with the chronic pain. And that's true for ourselves, that if we have an attitude that we're not doing enough, that there's something else that we should be doing that we're not doing, or that we should be different than we are in order to cope with our pain, that adds an extra layer of stress and anxiety to ourselves. And it can add stress and anxiety to a relationship in which someone you love is dealing with chronic pain. So the opposite, also true, that when you create space for someone to deal with their healing process in the time and way that it takes, then that can add a lot of space to your relationship, as well as provide necessary support for them to find what works for them as they need it, because it's not always the right time to do, to take the steps that may be helpful for us down the road.
Yeah, that's great. So we have a question from Diane on YouTube. And Diane says, will we be doing physical movement in the workshop, or is it entirely conversational?
Ah, awesome. I'm glad you asked. There will be no conversation, really. I'm hoping this is like the most I'm going to say ever. I mean, maybe a little bit more, but it's definitely going to be exploring through movement. And the focus of the workshop will be a kind of three-branched approach to doing Feldenkrais work, which is a movement-based modality. And the three branches that we'll be exploring, cultivating, working on are getting more comfortable with ourselves, getting more comfortable in order to engage in these movement sequences, using visualization strategies and techniques in engaging with the movement sequences, and cultivating a present moment awareness within the context of these movement sequences. And that being said, I've now said movement sequences like 3 times, but the movements themselves can actually be done in the imagination and don't necessarily have to be executed as I'm suggesting them. So I'm going to make suggestions about particular movements and give options for engaging with those instructions. Some of those options will be to do the movements, and some of those options will be to imagine the movements, to either picture yourself doing the movements in a kind of image projection kind of way, and then also feeling through the process of imagining yourself moving from a very internal kind of way. And those are 2 of the strategies that we'll be implementing in cultivating this capacity to imagine the movements, use visualization.
Yeah, and I think once people start doing it, it'll make more sense to them. It'll be more clear.
Yeah, thank you, Marcia. It's hard to talk about these things abstractly because they are very much an embodied practice, and it has to do with, it has to do with this, the third thing I mentioned, which is cultivating present moment awareness through the practice of these gentle movement sequences, and that we can even start right now, just feeling yourself without making any changes, how you are, if you're sitting, standing, lying down, and moving toward a deep feeling, a real true feeling of your own body in space. It can be how the air contacts your skin. It could be the weight of your bones as your body makes contact with either the floor or the chair in gravity. It can be the feel of your skin to skin if your hands are touching each other, or if one part of your body is touching another part of your body.
Yeah, those are great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
coming into presence in this way is in itself a kind of healing, that it counteracts the effects of chronic pain. It counteracts the anxiety. It counteracts the feelings of worthlessness that can come with that, or devaluing ourselves, or a disembodiment with ourselves where we distance ourselves from ourselves physically. That's one thing that was a big challenge to me coming to the Feldenkrais method, was learning how to approach myself physically and learn to appreciate my own physical presence. But also to say that it is something that takes practice. So if those like few seconds of making suggestions about present moment awareness didn't resonate strongly for you right now, that's totally okay. We're going to be doing it for 2 hours. And it's more of a sort of primer or way to get used to doing the Feldenkrais method from this lens of coming from a history of chronic pain or chronic illness, or some other life-altering condition that makes it difficult, and different tools that we can implement in order to make the Feldenkrais method more accessible.
Yeah, and I want to get to the sound you just made in the life altering if we have time, but we've got some more questions coming in. So
Yeah.
All right. So Colette says that 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome with several lumbar sympathetic blocks, and they're still managing chronic joint pain because of multiple musculoskeletal issues. And so there's a lot going on for Colette. And then Colette says, how will Feldenkrais movement and practice help with both the leg pain? And then there's, that's where the question gets cut off. So I'm not sure what the other thing is, but that already seems like quite a bit to address right now.
Yeah, and I'll just start talking, and Colette, if you have more to add or something to fill in about your history or something to contextualize my comments, please go ahead and write more. So I too have complex regional pain syndrome. That's how I came to the Feldenkrais method. So I feel well suited to answer this question, even though your history is totally different than mine and the way that your symptoms are presenting could be quite different. But I feel like these strategies are applicable regardless. And I can't say whether or not your leg pain will improve by doing this workshop or by doing Feldenkrais in general. But I can say with confidence that you will feel better, because the practices that we'll be doing are a way of getting in touch with yourself, listening to yourself, being gentle with yourself, treating yourself with compassion, finding your comfort. Like finding your comfort can be so friggin' huge. If you're in excruciating pain 24 hours a day, finding comfort is not easy. It's super not easy. And when I first started my training program, I had to pace the room. Like I couldn't lie down. I felt really uncomfortable with the contact of my body with the floor. Like it was not an easy sinking into the floor kind of jelly sort of feeling at all. And I wanted to avoid it. I wanted to avoid contact generally. So pacing was a strategy that I used, and I feel like it helped. Like I totally needed it. I'm not saying that everybody needs to pace or anything, but I think that we all need to figure out what works for us in the moment when we're engaging with these lessons, but then also larger in life. So doing that for a Feldenkrais lesson, this workshop will be 2 hours, but like if you were to continue doing Feldenkrais after this, I would say an hour a day, an hour every 2 days would be a really good kind of starting point. And if you were to do Feldenkrais for an hour every day, that would give you an hour in which to get to know yourself, to get to know what makes you more comfortable, to get to know what makes the pain worse, to get to know some of the strategies that make it possible to be with the pain in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming, so that you can make room for it happening, because it's happening anyway. Like you can't get rid of it. If you could, you would have done so a long time ago. So now you have it. Like, how do you live with it? How do you make the space for it? And those tools, I think, make everyone feel better. Like, there's no way that can't help. But I can't say it would help your leg pain specifically.
Colette did write in a little bit more, but I think you addressed this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyways, in case there's more you want to add. That when my skin is in colder weather, even when the skin is protected from the cold, Colette's pain increases exponentially. How will these methods help in that situation?
Yes, so I think that is a great question, actually, because the sensorial changes, I mean, because complex regional pain syndrome is the thing that I navigate. I could talk about this for hours, so I'll have to curb myself. But there's a way in which our nervous system gets overwhelmed by the stimulus in the environment or our internal stimulus. So either way, we have to learn how to navigate that stimulus. And these are the kinds of tools that we'll be developing. It won't be specific to cold. It won't be specific to hot. It will be something that you personally can cultivate as a means of generating resources that you can meet different experiences with. Hopefully, some of the resources that you can build for yourself during the workshop would be how to meet cold, but there may be others that emerge that you didn't anticipate, like, I don't know, a stressful situation at work or whatever. Like, I'm just throwing that out there randomly, but who knows?
Yeah, that's great. Let's see. So Gail asks, I will be traveling on the 19th. Will you be repeating this class at another time?
No, but there'll be a recording, so it'll get posted. And if you can't come to the live event, do sign up anyway, and you'll be able to access the recording indefinitely. It'll always be available. And you can always interact with me and the other staff from the workshop through the interface of the Feldenkrais Access website. So you don't need to feel at all like limited by the fact that you can't come live.
Awesome. All right. So next question. This person doesn't have physical pain per se, but they do have physical discomfort, which includes nausea, lightheadedness, vertigo, fatigue, etc., which is triggered by various movements and body positions. They read your Q&A in the paragraph with Ira, where you describe when a trainer came over and asked why you keep pushing yourself, and then they told you just to stop. That like really resonated with them. So this person writes, I think that I've had a similar insight to you about what my aim should be with regards to my relationship with my body, with the help of a brilliant local Feldenkrais teacher and regular FIs with her over the years, as well as the invaluable input from Feldenkrais Access practitioners. Thank you for that. However, I feel I still have a long way to go along this path, and that I could potentially learn a lot from you on the subject. Would you recommend this particular workshop for me with regards to my own situation, and/or are you planning to do another workshop on other potentially related themes in the future?
I'm so glad that resonated with you and that you feel like you're having a similar experience, because I think that this is really foundational to the Feldenkrais method being effective. And for me, I was moving too much. I was moving too much and too fast when the trainer came over and made that suggestion to me. But the underlying understanding of myself was the awakening. It wasn't about the pace or the distance or anything like that. It was that suddenly I was like, oh, wow, like I wasn't listening to myself. I was getting feedback from my body and movement saying that I was uncomfortable moving at that rate or that distance, and I was ignoring it because I thought that there was something I was supposed to achieve. And if you're new to the Feldenkrais method, which this person is not, but just saying that for people who are out there, it's kind of a different thing. It's really quite different than other movement-based modalities of healing. So it's really eye-opening, and it takes a while. It takes a while to come to that understanding. So the fact that you're already working with a practitioner is you're in really a good position to benefit from the method and from your own learning. So I'm really happy for you, and it sounds like you're moving toward something really beneficial, and that you've had a similar kind of eye-opening experience or awareness of yourself where you've come to this understanding about how to meet yourself where you are rather than where you think you should be, which I think is really fundamental. And yes, absolutely, please do come to the workshop. I feel like I've already said this, but I'm going to say it again, that the physical manifestations or the emotional manifestations that might bring us to this workshop or the Feldenkrais method in general don't determine how much value we get from it. The value is there for us regardless of who we are or how our difficulties are manifesting themselves. I picked chronic pain chronic pain picked me for the workshop because it's what I live with. So it's like what I know. And I feel like I want to share some of the things that have been so important to me with other people. And that's why I'm teaching this workshop. But it doesn't mean that people who don't have chronic pain or who have other life challenges can't benefit from the same material.
That's true. And then are you planning on teaching something like this in the future?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to teach again for sure.
I think when we were talking before, you also mentioned that the skills you're going to teach in this workshop can be applied to any Feldenkrais lesson or workshop, which I thought was helpful. So even though the workshop's only 2 hours, like what you learn will be applicable to other things.
That's right. Thank you so much, Marcia. Yes, this is more about the tools that we can generate within this time frame that we have, but you can also, as I said, replay all of the recordings. So it can be a lifetime of study, really. But the study itself can be applied to different Feldenkrais lessons, that these tools of how to make yourself comfortable, how to use different tools of visualization, different visualization practices, and the imagination in action, and cultivating present moment awareness, that these are the tools that we're going to be working on. And these tools can be applied to different Feldenkrais lessons. Absolutely. That's the idea. Thank you, Marcia.
Yeah, because I feel like they're sometimes mentioned in Feldenkrais lessons, but we don't always focus on it. So this is like where you're really going to expand it, right? And really give people a chance to really find comfort as best they can, right? Without having to worry about moving on to the next movement, etc.
Exactly. Thank you.
So there is a question. They say pain is multifaceted and complex, and our relationship with it is constantly evolving. Sorry. So they're quoting you in that. And they agree and say, in my experience, people rarely talk about this multifaceted nature of pain. And then they're saying some things which I think overlap really beautifully with what you've already said. And then they were wondering about this idea where you expand these moments of relief rather than trying to get rid of the unpleasant sensations. And they were wondering if you could either say more about how this happens or just share some of your own personal experiences with that.
Yes, totally, both. And thank you for writing. This kind of comes back around to the first question that we had about the parent with the hip replacement surgery, that the way in which we approach our pain can have a really significant impact on how it manifests for us. And if we approach it from the idea of it being bad and wrong and we have to get rid of it, it makes it a lot harder to live with. But if we look at it and examine it and feel its effect, and open to what all else is happening, because there's always a lot else, sometimes that creates a kind of spaciousness, and that sort of leans toward this more open weave, as I was saying before, that having a more multifaceted, a more complex comprehension of the present moment, understanding, experience, a more complex experience of the present moment actually makes space for the pain, because our attention is dispersed among more than just the pain. Whereas focusing on the pain and trying to get rid of it makes it a lot harder, a lot more rigid, a lot more painful, a lot more difficult to be with. And that is also among the skills of present moment awareness that we'll be developing, where we can create a kind of spaciousness around our pain so that we can live with it more easily.
That's great. So we're at time now. It's been 30 amazing, insightful, informative, and compassionate minutes with Juniper. Juniper, is there anything else you want to share before? Oh, I should say really quickly to everyone, if we didn't get a chance to answer your question, we will respond after through the appropriate platform. So wherever you submitted your question, we'll be sure to get back to you there within the coming, I don't know, within the coming days or within a...
Yeah, I think that today probably.
Okay, today. Excellent. Yeah, but is there anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No, thank you everyone so much for joining us from the social media platforms you joined us from. I'm so grateful, and I can't wait to either see you on the 19th or hear from you on the website after you've done the recordings. And do continue to send in questions too, if you listen to this later. Great. Thank you, Marcia.